I'm going to tell you about what kind of weather to expect when you visit Washington, D.C. Hello, welcome to Trip Hacks DC. My name is Rob. I'm a tour guide here in the nation's capital. If you're coming to Washington, D.C. and you're looking for the best tips, tricks, and hacks for exploring the city, make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell notification icon so that you don't miss any new videos. And if you're interested in signing up for a Trip Hacks DC tour, head on over to triphacksdc.com afterwards to see the tours that I offer. If you have visited DC before, leave a comment on this video about when you came and what the weather was like, and whether you thought it was too hot, too cold, or just right. With that said, let's get started. This video was inspired by the fact that every year on tour, I take out a group on an absolutely perfect, beautiful evening. It's warm, but not hot. It's breezy, but not windy. And there's little to no humidity. And I swear, without fail, every time this happens, they ask, is the weather always this nice? And the answer, unfortunately, is no. Washington, D.C. is not San Diego. We have 4 seasons, but only a few perfect days sprinkled about throughout the year. That means in the summer, it's hot and humid. In the winter, it's cold. And sometimes, it even snows. And if you want to know exactly what happens when it snows, make sure to check out the video description because I have an entire video on that exact topic. Spring and fall are your best bets for a perfect day, but even those can be pretty unpredictable. One way to quantify the weather in Washington, D.C. is using what's called the daily digit, which is published by the meteorologists in the Washington Post. They have a project called the Capital Weather Gang, and every day of the year they publish a score on a 0 to 10 scale rating how nice the weather is that day. Of course, this is a somewhat subjective way of quantifying the weather, but I actually think their scores are pretty accurate. And I spend a lot of time outdoors as a tour guide, so I feel like I can be a pretty good judge. A few years ago, they did an analysis of their daily digits, and the results are really interesting. The average daily digit was 6.02, which means that on a completely typical day, the weather is neither great nor terrible. Not surprisingly, the months with the highest average daily digit are April and May in the spring, and September and October in the fall. The months with the lowest digits were December and January, the coldest months, and July, the hottest month. If you're interested in digging into this more yourself, I will leave a link to their analysis down in the description. But with that said, let's run through all of our seasons. If you're visiting during June, July, and August, the busiest 3 months of the year for tourism, you need to come prepared for heat and extreme humidity. The humidity is a really big deal, especially if you're coming from a climate where you don't have it. For example, you might look at a daily forecast and see it's going to be a high of 85 degrees, which doesn't seem so bad. But the thing is, when you get out there in the humidity, it might feel like the mid to high 90s. In the summer, sunscreen and water are a must. Bring a good water bottle with you, something that you can refill throughout the day. You also might want to pack a small umbrella, even if your favorite weather app only predicts a small chance of rain each day. Evening thunderstorms are very common here, and they often seem to pop up out of nowhere. And frankly, those prediction apps are often terrible at seeing them coming, even a few hours in advance. On the other end of the spectrum, winter is definitely the slowest time of year for tourism. A lot of tour companies in DC actually close entirely during these months. The thing about winters in DC is that, yeah, they're cold, but they're not bitterly cold. That said, we do occasionally get a big extended cold snap. In 2018, it was so cold for so many days in a row that our rivers both froze over. So if you come during the winter, pack a coat, hat, and gloves, and plan for some indoor activities. But don't think that outdoor activities are completely out of the question either. Spring often has some beautiful days, but it's also one of the most unpredictable, especially the month of March. In March, it can sometimes swing from beautiful and spring-like to cold and winter-like, seemingly in a matter of hours. May tends to have the most consistently spring-like weather. And of course, the big question in spring always is, when are the cherry blossoms going to be in bloom? That answer is tied heavily to the weather. Warmer weather in February and early March usually means an earlier bloom. And cold weather during those times usually means a later bloom. If you can swing a fall trip, this is my personal favorite time of year in DC. The weather is usually still warm, but the humidity is starting to wind down, which makes it a lot more pleasant than those summer months. And one thing to keep in mind is that Washington, D.C. might not be a beach town, but we're only about 100 miles from the Atlantic Ocean, so a hurricane or a tropical storm near the coast is always a possibility here. And that's it! Thank you for watching this video. If you found it helpful, you can subscribe to this channel by clicking on the TripPacks DC logo, which is popping up right now at the bottom of the screen. And if you're coming to DC and want to sign up for a TripPacks DC tour, you can click on the Capitol Dome on the left side of my head. That'll send you over to trippacksdc.com, where you can see all of the tours that I offer. Enjoy your trip!